The screaming started before the music even stopped. I remember the way Trevor's voice cracked when the officers pulled his wrists behind his back, shouting that it was all my fault. Corinne stood a few feet away, her veil torn loose, tears streaking the makeup she had put on so carefully that morning. Guests were yelling, chairs scraping, envelopes scattered like white feathers across the floor. Someone called his name. Someone else called mine. But I stood still, holding the edge of a water glass with a hand that did not shake. If someone had taken a picture of that moment, they would have imagined I felt victorious. But inside, all I felt was the echo of the sentence that started everything. It came the night before the wedding. Corinne had asked to speak with me alone. No arguing, no hesitation. She walked into my small living room with a face that did not belong to the girl I raised. She did not sit. She did not soften. She just looked at me with those blue eyes that used to light up whenever I surprised her with birthday pancakes. And she said, in a voice too steady to be spontaneous, "The best gift you can give us is to disappear from the family." I remember blinking once, thinking I had misheard. I am 72, not fragile, not frail. But those words landed like someone pressing a palm against my chest and pushing hard. "Corinne," I managed. "What are you talking about?" She glanced toward the door, as if expecting Trevor to appear. "We want a clean start. He thinks it's best if you step away permanently." There was no tremor in her voice, no regret. She spoke like someone delivering a message that had been rehearsed, and that hurt more than the words themselves. I felt something in me collapse, a quiet folding inward of a place I had kept open for my daughter all her life. I had survived the death of my husband, the loneliness of raising Corinne alone, the years of working in archives to keep a roof over our heads. I never expected to survive this, but I did not cry. I did not plead. I did not ask how a mother becomes dispensable. I just stood there, nodded once, and said, "If that is what you want." She exhaled, relieved, relieved. Then she walked out with a tight little smile, as if she had completed a task. When the door closed behind her, I sat down with my hands folded in my lap, waiting for the grief to hit. It did not. Not in the way I expected. What came instead was clarity, painful, bright, steady. So I didn't argue. I whispered to the empty room. I didn't cry. I simply disappeared, but not the way she meant. Because disappearing, as I learned that night, is not always about leaving. Sometimes it is about removing what someone thought they owned. Hours later, while the chaos of the wedding unfolded around me and Trevor screamed my name as the officers dragged him away, I felt the weight of her words again, only now they had a different shape, a different meaning, and a different power. And that is where the real story begins. When Corinne was little, she used to press her whole face against my shoulder whenever she wanted comfort. I can still feel the warmth of her breath on my collarbone the night her father died. She was 9, old enough to understand the words "he's gone," but young enough to believe my arms could protect her from every kind of loss. I remember sitting on the floor beside her bed, whispering stories until she fell asleep, promising her that we would always have each other. At the time, I believed it with every part of me. We grew through the years like two branches of the same tree. She learned to cook before I did, learned to drive by circling the church parking lot while I cheered her on from the passenger seat, learned to write long, thoughtful birthday cards that I tucked into a shoebox I still keep under my bed. When she moved to Seattle for college, she called me every night for the first 3 months. She told me everything her classes, her friends, the odd professor who smelled like peppermint tea. I never imagined there would come a day when she would hide pieces of her life from me. The distance began quietly. I noticed it during the winter she turned 30. Her phone calls became shorter, her tone a little sharper, her laughter thinner. When I asked how she was, she would say, "Fine, Mom," as if the question annoyed her. Those changes were small enough to excuse. And I did. I told myself she was tired or busy or simply growing up. I did not want to believe anything else. Then she met Trevor Marston. The first time I saw them together, they walked into my kitchen with matching smiles. Trevor shook my hand with both of his. Warm and confident. "Mrs. Ridgway, it is an honor to finally meet you," he said. And Corinne beamed at him, as if grateful he knew the right thing to say. I answered with a polite smile, but something shifted inside me. His smile was too smooth, his voice too measured. It was the kind of charm that looked polished, practiced, designed to win approval from anyone who might stand in his way. I tried to ignore the pinch of discomfort in my chest. Corinne started staying at his condo more often. She canceled our weekly coffee dates. She brushed off my questions about her job, her stress, her finances. When I gently asked if Trevor was treating her well, she snapped. "Why do you always assume the worst?" She had never spoken to me like that before. The words hit me harder than I let her see. One evening, after dinner at their place, I asked Trevor about his work. He leaned back in his chair, smiling as he explained that he was between opportunities because he had left his father's legal firm to pursue a promising business venture. Corinne's eyes darted toward him, searching for reassurance. He reached over and took her hand, squeezing it just a shade too tightly, and said, "Your mother worries too much." It was so subtle that no one but me noticed the tension in her fingers, the way she forced her smile. I felt a thin line of unease settle under my skin. Later that night, as I drove home, I replayed their interaction in my head. The tenderness between us, mother and daughter, had once been effortless. But ever since Trevor entered her life, she seemed to be shrinking in ways she could not see. I told myself to stay patient, to stay open, to stay present for her. Love, after all, is something mothers hold even when their hands begin to tremble. But something had shifted, and I could feel the change settling deep inside me as I turned onto my street. The girl who once clung to my shoulder was drifting somewhere I could not reach, and I had no idea how far she would go. The rehearsal dinner should have felt warm, noisy, familiar. Instead, every time I stepped toward Corinne, she stepped away, turning to a bridesmaid, adjusting a flower, pretending she didn't notice me standing inches behind her. I tried once more, gently touching her elbow. "Honey, I brought the bracelet your father gave you. I thought you might like to—" "Not now, Mom," she whispered without looking at me. "Please." The word please was soft, but the distance behind it felt like a closed door. I let my hand fall back to my side. Trevor appeared almost instantly, as if he had been watching for the moment she spoke to me. "Marlena," he said, forcing a friendly tone as he offered a handshake I did not take. "We are so glad you could make it tonight." His voice had the gleam of someone who had practiced sounding gracious in the mirror. "I am her mother," I answered. "Of course I am here." His smile didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "Naturally. We all want the night to go smoothly. No surprises." Corinne touched his arm with the quick, nervous gesture of someone trying to prevent a conflict before it sparks. She murmured, "Trevor, please," like she had said to me moments earlier. Her voice trembled just enough for me to hear it, and he noticed too. He rested a hand on her back. "Relax, sweetheart," he said. "Your mother and I understand each other." I said nothing. Corinne drifted away again before I could try to speak to her. A server passed by, offering small plates, and I took one mostly to keep my hands busy. As I stepped to the side of the room, Trevor's voice floated behind me, too close, too sharp. I did not mean to overhear, but the phrases carried, "She needs to stop interfering, I told you. Boundaries, think of the future, we want. Your mother does not get to decide." Corinne's faint reply was swallowed by the noise of guests, but the tension in Trevor's words stayed with me. I moved farther away before Trevor could see me listening. My heart thudded painfully, but I kept my face calm as people greeted me in passing. A bridesmaid approached with careful steps. I recognized her, Harper, one of Corinne's college friends. She offered a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Ridgway, your dress is lovely. Thank you." "Harper," I said, studying her expression. "You seem worried." She hesitated, glancing toward Trevor, who was now laughing loudly with a cluster of groomsmen. "It is probably not my place." "Say it anyway," I murmured. She lowered her voice. "Something about Trevor doesn't add up. He has these stories about work big projects, big clients, but the details never match. Whenever I ask a simple question, he changes it or laughs it off." She swallowed. "And Corinne, she has changed. She was never this jumpy." A cold line settled across my spine. "Has she said anything to you?" "No," Harper said quickly. "That is the problem. She used to tell me everything." Trevor's laugh echoed across the room again, too loud for the conversation he was having. Harper stepped back, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Please don't say I said anything. I worry about her." "I do too," I said. Harper moved away just as Corinne returned to Trevor's side, looping her arm through his. She didn't notice me standing only a few feet away. He leaned close, murmured something into her ear, and she forced a smile that made my chest ache. There was a shift in the room, something quiet but unmistakable. Conversations faltered when Trevor passed by, as if he carried a pressure that smothered the air around him. Corinne clung to his arm, her posture small, her movements cautious. I watched the two of them standing among their guests, and the warmth that should have filled this night drained away. The rehearsal dinner continued, the laughter and chatter carrying on as if nothing were wrong, but I could feel something tightening beneath the surface, a truth pushing upward, waiting to break open. And I knew then that the distance growing between my daughter and me was no accident at all. The rehearsal dinner had barely ended when Corinne approached me with a stiff smile that slipped the moment no one else was looking. "Mom," she whispered, "can we talk for a minute? Somewhere quiet." Before I could answer, Trevor stepped behind her, placing a hand on her back as if guiding her forward. "The library is empty," he said. His tone was polite, but his eyes stayed fixed on me. Unblinking, Corinne walked ahead. Trevor followed. I found myself trailing after them down a narrow hallway until we reached the small side library the venue kept open for guests. Corinne stepped inside first. Trevor closed the door behind us without making a sound. Corinne did not sit. She stood in the center of the room, arms crossed tight at her chest. "I need to say something," she began. Her voice quivered, but she kept going. "Tomorrow is my wedding, and Trevor and we have talked a lot about the future." Trevor leaned against a bookshelf, silent, watching. Corinne inhaled sharply. "We want a clean start, a real start. And to do that, you need to step back." I tried to catch her eyes, but she looked past me, toward the window behind my shoulder. "Step back," I asked quietly. She flinched at my tone. "I mean disappear? From the family?" The words came out faster now, as if she had repeated them to herself before saying them aloud. "It is better for us if you are not involved anymore." Trevor's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted approval. Satisfaction. Something dark and quiet. My chest tightened. "Corinne," I said softly. "Where is this coming from?" Trevor spoke before she could respond. "She is trying to build a stable life," he said. "Your presence complicates things." Corinne shook her head quickly, but she did not contradict him. "Mom, you have always been too involved, too protective. Trevor and I want to be independent, Mom. We want boundaries." "Boundaries," Trevor echoed. "Healthy ones." I watched her shoulders tremble. She was reciting a script, and I could hear every rehearsed line in her breath. Is this what you want? I asked. Her jaw clenched. Yes. Trevor stepped closer to her, just enough that she could feel him at her side. She seemed to draw strength from his presence. Even though her body leaned away from him by a fraction, she probably did not notice. He spoke casually, almost gently. We just want peace. Marlena, if you stay involved, Corinne will have to choose, and no one wants to force that. It would be painful. For her. There it was, the threat dressed as concern. Corinne's voice cracked. Please do not make this harder. Just go after the wedding. Stay out of our marriage, so it will be better for everyone. I felt a slow, steady ache rise in my throat. But I swallowed it back. I love you, I told her. She blinked hard, looked away, and said nothing. Trevor moved toward the door. We are done here. His hand rested on the knob. We expect you to respect our wishes. Corinne followed him, pausing just long enough to look at me with a mixture of sorrow and fear. Fear I knew did not come from me. The door closed behind them. Quiet as a held breath, I stood alone in the library, feeling the echo of her words settle into my bones. I had seen many things in my 72 years, but nothing hollowed me out as quickly as the sentence my daughter had just delivered. I woke up at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding hard enough to shake the quiet of my house. I did not remember falling asleep. I only remembered the way Corinne's voice had cracked in the library, and the way Trevor had watched me like he was closing a door I would never be allowed to open again. I pushed myself out of bed, walked into the kitchen, and turned on the small lamp by the counter. Its light barely reached the table, but it was enough to illuminate the single sheet of paper lying there, the deed to the lake house. I sat down and smoothed the edges with shaking fingers. That house was supposed to be my gift to Corinne and Trevor, a blessing, a fresh start, a place where my daughter could build a life full of the happiness I never wanted her to struggle for. I had planned the surprise for months, saved every extra dollar, repaired every loose board myself. I had imagined her face when she learned it would be hers. Now the deed felt like a weight I had been carrying too long. I whispered, "You asked me to disappear." The words sounded strange in the stillness. I looked down at my hands. Hands that had braided her hair on the first day of school. Hands that had held her father's wedding ring after he died. Hands that had steadied her bicycle when she refused to give up. Trevor had turned those hands into something unwelcome. Corinne had repeated his words like they were her own. I pushed the deed away and closed my eyes. "If you want me gone," I said softly, "then I will go my way." The kettle clicked as it cooled. Though I could not remember turning it on, everything felt distant, as if I were watching myself from the other side of the room. The lake house had been meant for them. Now it would be my way out, a clean severing. I reached for my phone and typed a message to my real estate agent. List the lake house immediately. Price to move fast. No delays. My finger hovered above the screen for a long moment before I pressed send. The message whooshed away. The silence after was deeper than before. I tried to take a steady breath, but my chest felt too tight. I picked up the deed again, reading my name printed clearly across the top. Marlena Ridgway. A name I had almost forgotten belonged to someone strong. My phone buzzed suddenly, loud in the quiet. I flinched and looked down at the screen. Elias Warren. I had not heard from him in almost 8 months, not since he retired from private investigation and moved to Spokane to be closer to his grandson. I had left him a voicemail earlier that evening, my voice thin, asking for help without explaining why. Now he was calling at 3 a.m. I answered. Elias. He exhaled sharply, like he had been waiting for me to pick up. Marlena, I heard your message. What happened? I swallowed hard. I need you. I need to find out who Trevor Marston really is. Elias did not hesitate. All right. Tell me everything. Start from the moment things began to feel wrong. His voice steady, experienced, familiar, cut through the fog in my mind. I looked once more at the deed on the table. This started the day my daughter asked me to vanish. I said, and I think someone made sure she said it. Elias called again early the next morning, his voice brisk and awake, as if he had not slept at all. I started pulling what I could from public records, he said. Nothing invasive yet, just enough to know something doesn't line up. I pressed the phone between my shoulder and ear while scrolling through old emails on my laptop. Tell me, for someone who claims he left his father's firm to start a business, Elias said, there are no state filings under his name. None, not in Washington, not in Oregon, not in Idaho. If he is running anything, it is not legal or not registered. My stomach tightened. He said the business was in its early stages. That would still require paperwork, Elias replied, especially if he's told people he has partners. You said that. Right, yes, I murmured. He told Corinne the same. Then he's lying about something, Elias said. I will dig deeper. In the meantime, look for anything strange, emails, bank transfers, inconsistencies in stories. Small things often matter most. I closed the laptop for a moment, trying to steady my breath. Thank you, Elias. You called for a reason. He said, you knew something felt wrong. Trust that. Later that afternoon, Corinne stopped by to pick up a box of childhood photos she wanted for her reception slideshow. She barely stepped inside, hovering near the doorway as if staying too long might pull her off balance. You did not have to gather all this, she said. Lifting the box, it is no trouble, I replied. These were always meant for you. Her gaze flickered toward my dining table, where the deed to the lake house still lay half covered by a stack of mail. She frowned slightly. You are going through old documents. Just sorting, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated. I meant to tell you. Trevor has been dealing with some trust fund issues. That is why things feel strange with his family. His father froze the account without warning. He is trying to fix it. But it is stressful. I studied her face. The explanation came out too fast. Tu rehearsed another line from a script she did not write. I am sure he told you what he needed to, I said carefully. Her shoulders tensed. Mom, please, Trevor is under pressure. He does not need you judging him. I asked nothing. I replied. I was only listening. But she drew back anyway. Box clutched tight in her arms. I really need to go, she said. We have meetings with the caterer and the photographer. Her exit was quick, almost frantic. When the door closed behind her, the house felt colder than it had in months. I reopened my laptop. If Trevor had trust fund issues, there should be Trace's emails, bank statements, something. Instead, what I found were small patterns that felt wrong. Receipts for expensive dinners followed by weeks of no spending at all, charges at odd hours, frequent declines, then sudden withdrawals, a rhythm of someone juggling accounts that never balanced. An email from Corinne caught my eye, sent 6 months earlier. Mom, can you loan me a little just until Trevor's investment comes through? It's only for a week. Another one followed Mom. Trevor forgot his wallet again. Can you help just this once? I remembered those moments. I had sent her the money without asking questions. I had assumed they were small relationship hiccups. Now, reading them all together, the pattern felt sharper, pointed inward like a blade. The phone rang again. Elias. Marlena. I found something else, he said without greeting. Trevor claims he worked at his father's firm until recently, but the firm's public records list no Marston employed there in more than 3 years. He told Corinne he left because of a disagreement. I said, so he claims. Elias replied, but the firm let someone go 3 years ago for misappropriating funds. They did not publish the name, but I intend to find out if it was him. A chill slid through me. And one more thing, Elias added. The condo Trevor claims to own. It is rented, month to month. No ownership documents anywhere. I closed my eyes. Corinne doesn't know any of this. No, Elias said. But she needs to, carefully, gently. I stared at the emails glowing on the screen, small fragments of a truth Corinne couldn't see. Every line Trevor had fed her unraveled a little more. Keep digging, Elias. I whispered. We are nowhere near the bottom. Elias called the next morning with a tone that told me he had not slept. Marlena. I dug deeper, he said. Much deeper than I planned to this early. I sat down slowly. Tell me what you found. He exhaled through the receiver. Trevor never worked at his father's firm. Not for a single day. The firm confirmed that the Marston family has not hired a relative in more than 5 years. His story about leaving during a disagreement is fiction. My grip tightened around the phone. He told Corinne he left because the environment was toxic. He built a lie detailed enough to feel comforting, Elias said. That is what good manipulators do. I forced a breath. What else? There is a failed business under an alias, Elias continued. A consulting company called North Coast Advisory. The registered manager is someone named Eric Marden. That is close to his real name, I murmured. Too close, Elias said. The business lasted less than 1 year. It dissolved after multiple complaints from clients who invested money and received nothing in return. Were there lawsuits? Yes, 3. Each one disappeared quietly. Settlements? Most likely. The kind that happen when someone has just enough cash or leverage to shut people up. A heaviness settled in my chest. He told Corinne he had limited funds because his father froze his trust account. There is no trust account, Elias replied. At least not one in his name. I checked every public trust record in Jefferson County, King County, and Pierce County. Nothing. I pressed my fingers to the bridge of my nose. So everything he told her was crafted to keep her sympathetic, Elias finished. He lets her believe he is fighting to make a better life. Meanwhile, you mentioned earlier that he often forgets his wallet, that he borrowed money from you through her. He took almost $9,000 through those little requests. I said, my voice tight, always framed as small emergencies. That matches the pattern, Elias said. He has a specific type. Financially stable single mothers and daughters who love those mothers enough to help anyone they are attached to. The room tilted for a moment. Elias, how do you know this? There was a pause before he answered. Because you are not the first person to call me about him. A pulse of cold moved through me. Explain. He has been engaged before, Elias said quietly. Twice. Both relationships ended abruptly. One woman moved to Arizona and refused to speak to investigators afterward. The other filed a police report for financial coercion, but withdrew it 3 weeks later. When I reached out to her this morning, she said she had nothing to say. My mouth felt dry. Corinne has no idea. No, Elias said, and if he has followed the same pattern, he is isolating her. Once the marriage is finalized, it becomes harder for victims to leave, harder for courts to intervene, harder for mothers to stay connected. I sank into the chair beside my kitchen window. He chose her, I whispered. He looked at my daughter and chose her. He chose her because of you, Elias corrected. He knew she loved you. He knew you were stable, careful, and generous. Predators do not look for strength. They look for people connected to it. They feed on those connections. A sharp breath escaped me before I managed to steady it. Elias, I cannot let him take her the way he took those other women. You will not, he said, but we have to move carefully. He has slipped out of consequences before. If we confront him too early, I understand, I replied. We keep looking. Elias paused. There is one more thing. My heart beat hard against my rib. What, the alias he used, Eric Martin, shows up again in a rental contract for a cabin in Montana. The cabin was leased for 4 months. The woman with him left the contract early and never returned. I stared at the kitchen table. Barely breathing, Elias's voice softened. Marlena, your daughter is not the first, but she can be the last. I stared at the stack of printed reports spread across my dining table. Each page a piece of Trevor Marston he had never intended anyone to see. Lawsuits, complaints, rental histories under false names, financial trails that vanished right where victims said their money had disappeared. Elias had sent everything before dawn, each file labeled. Neat and cold. My phone rang. Elias again. Have you read it all, he asked. I have read enough, I answered. Every line feels like another hand on my daughter's throat. He exhaled. We can go to the police now, before the wedding. And then what I asked. They investigate for weeks while Corinne walks down the aisle tomorrow and signs herself into his life. He was quiet for a moment. You want something faster. I want something undeniable. I said, something he cannot twist or hide from. Something she cannot ignore because it is happening in front of everyone she knows. Elias's voice dropped. What are you thinking, Marlena? I am thinking about the reception, I said. About all those people he has charmed. About the way truth looks when it is placed in someone's own hands. Another pause. You plan to expose him there? Yes, I said. In front of everyone. I have tried protecting her quietly. It is time to protect her loudly. After we hung up, I dialed the event coordinator for the venue. She picked up on the second ring. This is Lacey, she said, sounding brisk and bright. Lacey, this is Marlena Ridgway, mother of the bride. I said, I need a favor, a discreet one. Of course, she replied. What do you need? I would like a small white envelope placed at each guest's seat before the reception begins. I said, they will be labeled. I will bring them myself. She hesitated. Are these favors? Or, they are something the guests need to see, I said. Nothing dangerous. Paper only. But it is important, and it must stay confidential. Lacey's professional tone softened just slightly. I have seen all kinds of family dramas, she said quietly. If this is what you want, we can make it happen. How many envelopes? 67, I said. One for every confirmed guest. Drop them off tomorrow morning, she replied. I will make sure they are set out just before dinner. When we hung up, the house felt heavy with purpose. I opened a fresh box of envelopes and began to stuff them one by one. Each envelope held a brief, clear summary of Trevor's history, the false employment claims, the dissolved company, the complaints, the prior engagements, the pattern of financial extraction. No commentary, no opinion, just facts. Let his own record speak, I murmured. I prepared one more pile of papers and slid them into a slightly thicker envelope, for Corinne alone. I printed the real estate listing for the lake house and the confirmation of sale I had received that afternoon. An all-cash offer. Closed quickly. Final. I added a single handwritten note on top. This was going to be your wedding gift. I chose a different gift instead, the chance to walk away. My hand trembled as I wrote. But the letters stayed legible. I sealed her envelope last, pressing the flap down slowly, as if drawing a line I could never uncross. By the time I finished, 67 white envelopes sat in a neat row on my table, each one holding a piece of truth that would tear through the lies he had wrapped around my daughter's life. I gathered them into a box, set it by the door, and rested my hand on the lid. Corinne knocked on my suite door just after 8 in the morning. Her voice was thin, almost brittle. Mom, are you up? I opened the door, and she stepped inside wearing a silk robe. her hair pinned halfway, curls slipping loose around her face. Her eyes were red. "I do not know why I am crying," she whispered. "Everything is supposed to be perfect today." I touched her cheek gently. Stress can make anyone feel everything at once. She folded into me before I expected it, her forehead pressing against my shoulder. "I feel like something is wrong, but I cannot name it." Her voice trembled. "Trevor says it is just nerves." I held her, steadying my breath. "It is a big day," I murmured. "Your body feels the weight of it." She pulled back, wiping under her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can you help me with the buttons on the back of the dress? My hands are shaking." I nodded and followed her to the chair where the gown hung. As she stepped into it, I lifted the fabric carefully, fastening each button one by one. Her breathing wavered with every touch. "Mom," she said quietly, "I am sorry if I have been difficult lately." My fingers paused at her waist. "You are under pressure." Anyone would react strangely. She swallowed. "I do not want us to be like this. I love you." A deep ache moved through my chest. "I love you too," I said. "Always." She sat down so I could place the veil on her head. When I fastened the pins, her hands clutched mine suddenly. "Do you think I am making a mistake?" Her eyes searched mine with an urgency I had not seen in months. I forced my voice to stay even. "Only you can know what is right for your life." "But what do you think?" she pressed. "Please, I need you to be honest." I almost told her everything: the investigations, the reports, the envelopes waiting quietly for their moment. I almost tore the morning open and ended the charade right there. But she looked too fragile, too close to breaking before she even walked down the aisle. So I squeezed her hands instead. "I think you should breathe. Just breathe, sweetheart." Her shoulders slumped as though she had been holding herself rigid for days. "Thank you for being here," she whispered, "even when I have not deserved it. You deserve a mother." I said, "And I am here." A soft knock sounded at the door, and Lacey, the coordinator, peeked in. 5 minutes until the photographer arrives. "Ready," Corinne nodded, standing slowly. "Ready," she said, though her voice betrayed hesitation. She hugged me again tight, desperate, warm. "Do not leave yet," she murmured. "I want you close. I will be right behind you." I answered. She smiled shakily and walked toward the hallway, veil floating behind her. When the door closed, the silence rushed back in. My hands trembled, and for a moment, I pressed them to my face. I had never been so close to abandoning the plan. One word from her, one honest plea, and I would have undone everything. But the box of envelopes waited in the trunk of my car, and the truth waited inside them, sealed and ready. I stood up and followed her out, carrying the weight of what this day would become. The ceremony moved with the kind of smoothness people brag about afterward, the kind that makes guests say, "It was perfect." The string quartet played something soft. Corinne walked down the aisle with a smile that flickered every time her eyes met mine. She looked beautiful, terrified, but beautiful. Trevor stood waiting at the altar, hands clasped behind his back, looking every bit the devoted groom he wanted the world to believe he was. When Corinne reached him, he lifted her hands gently, brushing his thumb over her knuckles as if he had earned the right to comfort her. Father Benton began the vows, his voice steady and warm. Trevor squeezed Corinne's fingers. Trevor Marston," he said, "promise to love you through every storm, every challenge, every unexpected turn." His tone was steady, but his eyes kept drifting toward me, checking, measuring, calculating. Corinne's voice wavered when it was her turn, but she pushed through each word, clinging to courage she should never have needed. Behind me, someone whispered, just loud enough to carry, "Something's not right with him." Another voice murmured, I cannot put my finger on it, but he feels off. I did not turn around. I did not react. I kept my eyes on Trevor, watching him lie with a smile that never touched his eyes. Corinne repeated her vows. She stumbled over the line about trust. Trevor steadied her with a hand on her waist, leaning close as if reassuring her. I saw the tension in her neck, the way her shoulders tightened under his touch. When the minister asked if anyone objected, the room fell silent. Trevor's gaze flicked to me again, a subtle warning hidden behind a pleasant expression. I folded my hands in my lap and did nothing. I let the silence settle. I let the moment pass. I let him think he had won. He leaned forward to place a kiss on Corinne's forehead, tender, practiced, hollow. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as if fighting off tears. Guests sighed with relief when Father Benton announced, "You are now husband and wife." Trevor raised their joined hands as though he had conquered something. He whispered into Corinne's ear. She managed a smile that looked painfully tight. People clapped. Some wiped away happy tears. No one noticed the slight tremor in Corinne's fingers. No one noticed Trevor's quick exhale. The sound of a man who had almost reached the finish line of a long con. I sat still, hands clasped together, feeling the weight of the box of white envelopes waiting in the trunk of my car. I kept my face calm, my breathing level, my heart steady. There was no need to interrupt vows built on lies. The truth would arrive soon enough. And when it did, it would not need a microphone or a minister to speak for it. It would speak from 67 sealed envelopes, each one ready to tear the life he built apart, one page at a time. The reception hall buzzed with the false warmth that follows a wedding polite laughter, clinking glasses, people clapping Trevor on the back like he was a man worth celebrating. Corinne stayed close to him, her smile exhausted, her hand trembling every time she adjusted her veil. I stood near the edge of the room, watching the coordinator slip quietly between tables, placing the white envelopes exactly where I had asked. No one noticed her. No one noticed me. Trevor certainly did not notice he was too busy soaking in the approval he believed he deserved. When the guests finally settled, the master of ceremonies stepped up to the microphone. He scanned his notes, then looked over at me and nodded. My pulse tightened. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced cheerfully, "before dinner is served, the mother of the bride has prepared a small gift for each of you. You'll find a white envelope at your place." A ripple of curiosity moved across the tables. Trevor's head snapped toward me. Corinne blinked, confused. "Mom, what is this?" I simply folded my hands. "A gift," I said. Trevor's jaw tightened. Guests began reaching for the envelopes. 67 hands lifted 67 identical slips of sealed white paper. Chairs creaked. Fabric rustled. The room settled into a hush as people slid their fingers under the flaps. The first crack of paper tearing open cut through the silence. Then the next. Then dozens more. I watched faces closely. Eyebrows drew together. Mouths tightened. Some people leaned closer to their companions, pointing at lines of text, whispering too urgently to be polite. A man at table 3, one of Trevor's supposed business acquaintances, stiffened. His voice sliced through the silence. "Eric Marden. Who the hell is this?" Trevor paled. Another guest stood abruptly. "You owe me $12,000 for that deal you promised last year," he shouted, waving the documents in the air. "You told me it was guaranteed return." Trevor's breath caught. "Sit down," he hissed. No one sat. A woman at the far table opened her envelope, gasped, and pressed a hand to her mouth. "He asked me for money too," she said shakily. "He said it was for a short-term investment. I gave him $5,000. He never paid it back." Chairs screeched as more people rose. One man pointed at the papers, voice cracking with fury. This says you've done this before. You stole from people in Spokane, in Missoula. Trevor lunged for his envelope, tearing it open, scanning the pages, then whipping his head toward me. What did you do? He demanded. Where did you get this? Your life produced it. I said, I only printed it. Corinne finally looked down at her envelope. Her hands shook so violently she could barely pull out the papers. She read the first line, then the second, and color drained from her face. Trevor, she whispered, voice barely audible. What is this? He grabbed her arm. Nothing. Lies. Your mother is trying to ruin us. One of the groomsmen held up his envelope. This is not a lie. This is a public record of your fraud case in Montana. Trevor spun toward him. Mind your own business. It becomes my business when you tried to get me to invest $10,000 in your fake company, the man shot back. Voices erupted everywhere, shouting, arguing, demanding answers. The entire room buzzed with anger, betrayal, accusation. Silverware clattered as people pushed back from tables. Corinne stood in the center of the chaos, frozen, shaking the papers in her hands like they might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. She looked at me, her voice breaking. Mom, what is happening? I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. The truth, I said softly. The truth you never deserved to learn this way, but the truth you needed. Trevor lunged toward me, face contorted with rage, but 3 guests blocked him instantly, pushing him back as he snarled. The room had turned into a storm, and every gust of it blew his lies apart. Trevor tried to push through the crowd, but the guests who had once toasted him now stood like a wall around him. A man in a dark suit jabbed a finger toward Trevor's chest. You told me you needed $15,000 for a contract buy-in, he shouted. You vanished the next week. Trevor backed away. I never said that. You misunderstood. Do not lie to me again, the man snapped. Another voice rose from the back. A woman stepped forward, her hands shaking around her envelope. You approached me at a fundraiser. You said you had a guaranteed 6-month return. I gave you $8,000. You blocked my number 2 days later. Trevor whipped toward her. You are exaggerating. I was going through a difficult time. Her eyes filled with rage. You ruined my savings. Corinne clutched her own envelope, staring at the pages as if they were written in a language she had never seen. Trevor, she said quietly, is any of this true? Of course not, he said immediately. This is your mother. She has manipulated everyone. She is jealous. Corinne, she never wanted you to marry me. I stepped forward, but I did not raise my voice. You did that all on your own. Trevor pointed at me, practically shaking. She is lying. She fabricated all of this. She has hated me since the day we met. Hate requires knowing a person. I replied, I only knew the mask you showed my daughter. A heavy-set man from the front table lifted his envelope. These are public records, he said. Police filings, lawsuits, complaints. You can deny us, but the documents are real. Trevor's face twisted. They are taken out of context. A woman near the head table stood, her voice trembling. Did you use my name on a loan application? This says you did. Trevor's shoulders hunched. His smooth, charming voice was gone. I did what I needed to survive. Corinne's breath hitched. You said your trust fund was frozen. You said your father cut you off. Trevor let out a short, bitter laugh. You believed that Corinne. Sometimes you are so. Do not insult her, I cut in. He rounded on me. Stay out of this. She is my wife. She needs to hear the truth from me. She is your victim, I said. Corinne stepped between us, her hands trembling. Trevor, please, tell me what is real. He grabbed her wrist. Listen to me. She flinched. Let go. She whispered, but he didn't. I moved forward. Take your hand off her. For a moment, he didn't move. Then several guests surged forward, forcing him to release her. He stumbled back, breath ragged, eyes wild. Corinne looked down at the papers again, voice cracking. Who is Eric Marden? Trevor didn't answer. She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. Why were you engaged before? Twice. Why did those women leave? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Her voice rose. Trevor, tell me the truth. Silence from him. Only the sound of whispers rippling through the room. I reached into my handbag and pulled out the thick envelope with her name written across the front. My hand shook not with fear, but with the weight of what I was about to give her. Corinne, I said softly, this one is yours. She took it carefully, as though afraid it might break. She opened it, pulled out the property listing, then stared at the bright red letters across the top. Sold. She blinked rapidly. Mom, what is this? The lake house, I said. The one I planned to gift you, Bussy. It belongs to someone else now. Trevor whirled toward me. You sold it, you insane woman. A man grabbed Trevor by the shoulders. Do not speak to her like that. Corinne's voice was barely a breath. Why would you sell it? Because you asked me to disappear, I said, and that house tied me to a future he wanted to steal from you. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. I never asked. You repeated his words. I said, he fed them to you. You did not know what you were saying. Trevor tried to shove past the guests, but hands held him back. He shouted my name. Cursed. Demanded that Corinne ignore me, but she wasn't listening to him anymore. She was staring at the evidence in her hands, trembling as the life she thought she had chosen crumbled in front of her. And for the first time since the engagement began, she finally saw him. The room shook with voices, accusations, the scrape of chairs, the thud of footsteps. In the center of it all, Trevor pulled at his suit jacket like he could tear himself free from the truth pressing in on him. Corinne clutched the papers from her envelope, her knuckles white, her breath shallow. I stepped toward her. Corinne, I said quietly, he told me something in the library last night. Something you deserve to hear from him. Trevor snapped his head toward me. Do not start with that. I am not starting anything, I said. You are going to finish it. Corinne turned to him, shaking. What is she talking about? Trevor looked from her to me, calculating. Your mother is twisting things. She is trying to ruin this day. This day is already ruined. Corinne whispered, just tell me what you told her. He let out a bitter laugh. I did not tell her anything. She made it up to, do not lie again, I said, sharper than before. Tell her. He took a step back. Someone behind him shifted, blocking his escape. His eyes flickered toward the exit. Then he lunged sideways, but two guests caught his arms. Corinne's voice cracked. Trevor. Say it. Just say it. He stopped struggling for a moment, chest heaving. Corinne, he said, trying to soften his voice. Your mother is trying to turn you against me. If you let her, everything we built. What did you say? She cried in the library last night. Trevor glared at me. You want to destroy her. You could not stand the idea of her marrying someone who actually... That is enough, I cut in. Tell her the words, exactly as you told me. Corinne stepped closer, her voice barely a breath. Trevor, did you ask my mother to disappear? He swallowed hard. His eyes darted. Corinne, I said we needed space. That is all. No. I said, you said, the best thing she can do for us is disappear permanently. And you threatened that if she did not, you would make Corinne choose between you and me. Corinne stared at him, trembling. Did you say that Trevor clenched his jaw? Silence stretched. His shoulders rose and fell, intense. Uneven breaths. Trevor. She whispered, Did you make me say those words to my own mother? He finally broke. I told you what needed to be said, he snapped. Your mother was in the way. She is always in the way. Gasps rippled through the room. Corinne's breath hitched violently. You told me. You said it was my idea. Trevor rubbed his hands over his face. Corinne, listen, you needed to choose us. You were too attached to her. I helped you set a boundary. That was not a boundary, she choked out. That was cruelty. And I repeated it. I said it like it was mine. Her knees buckled slightly, and a bridesmaid caught her elbow. Corinne pressed her hands against her mouth. Shaking as the realization washed over her, Trevor tried again to twist the moment. Corinne, I was protecting us. Your mother is manipulating everything. I stepped forward. You manipulated my daughter. You weaponized her love. You used her to isolate me so you could control her finances and her life. He turned on me with sudden, wild fury. You cost me everything. You cost yourself, I said evenly. He lunged toward me again. But this time, 3 guests grabbed him. Pinning him back, someone shouted. Police are on their way, another voice added. 2 victims called them already. The room shifted fear, rage, justice, all pulling tight like a net around him. Trevor thrashed against the hands holding him. Let me go. She is lying. They are all lying. Corinne. Tell them I am done defending you, Corinne cried. I am done being used. That broke something in him. He sagged for a moment, defeated, then twisted violently, trying to run. The crowd closed in, blocking every path. 2 officers burst through the double doors, breathless. Trevor Marston, one called out. Trevor shook his head wildly. No. This is a mistake. You are under arrest for fraud, identity misrepresentation, and financial coercion, the officer said, voice steady. As they cuffed him, Trevor looked directly at Corinne. You fool, he spat. You think your mother saved you? She destroyed you. Corinne stepped backward as if struck. The officers pulled him away. His shouts echoed off the walls until the doors slammed shut behind him. And finally, the room went still. Corinne stood trembling, shattered. The truth, heavy in her hands. I reached for her gently, and she did not pull away. The moment the doors closed behind Trevor and the officers, the noise dissolved into a low, stunned murmur. People whispered, gathered their things, avoided looking at Corinne. She stood completely still, her fingers trembling around the papers she had been clutching. When I stepped toward her, she did not move away. She simply lowered her head onto my shoulder like she had when she was small. Mom, she whispered, voice raw. I did not see any of it. I did not see him. I held her gently. You were not supposed to. Men like him do not choose women who see through them. They choose women with open hearts. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I said those words to you. I told you to disappear. I let him twist everything. Her throat tightened. How can you look at me because I know whose voice you were speaking with? I said softly. And it was never yours. Her chest rose in a shaking breath. I still said it. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. You can say one sentence in a moment of confusion and regret it for the rest of your life. I know who you are. A bridesmaid approached slowly. Corinne, she said, placing a hand on her arm. We are all so sorry. We should have said something sooner. We noticed things, but we thought you were happy. Corinne forced a small nod. I thought I was too. The bridesmaid squeezed her hand, then stepped away to give us space. Corinne looked at me again, eyes pleading. Mom, there is something I need to ask. How long did you know something was wrong? A while. I admitted, and you did not tell me. Her voice cracked with confusion more than anger. I tried, but gently. I said, you were in love. You were convinced he was your future. I needed proof before I risked losing you completely. Her breath shook. I could have been trapped with him. You were almost trapped, I said. That is why I had to act. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth, trying not to cry again. And the lake house. You sold it for me. I hesitated, then reached into my purse and pulled out a folded page, the receipt I had not shown her yet. There is something else, I said. She opened it, scanning quickly, then looked up at me in shock. Mom, this says you sent Trevor money more than once. How much I swallowed. Over the past 8 months, $37,000. Her face crumpled. Mom, why would you? Because you told me you needed help, I said, my own voice unsteady. You said he forgot his wallet. You said he would pay me back in a week. You said the investment was real. And you believed him. So I believed you. She sank into the nearest chair, shoulders shaking. He was using me to get to you. To your savings. To everything you earned. I knelt beside her. He cannot touch you anymore. And he cannot touch me. She reached for my hand, squeezing tightly. I do not know how to start fixing this. We start by breathing. I said, one moment at a time. And you will not be doing it alone. She leaned into me again, whispering a quiet, broken, thank you. I held her as the last guests drifted out, as empty chairs stood crooked across the floor, and the remains of her wedding day hung like smoke in the air. Neither of us moved. Neither of us rushed. There was nowhere else we needed to be. Elias arrived at my house the next afternoon carrying a thick binder under his arm. Corinne sat beside me on the couch, wrapped in one of my old sweaters, her hands clasped tightly together. She rose when he entered. Trying to look steadier than she felt, Elias nodded to her. I am sorry you learned everything the way you did, he said gently. But I am glad you know. Corinne's voice was quiet. Thank you for helping my mother. He set the binder on the coffee table. I wish I could tell you Trevor was a one-off case. He is not. I opened the cover. Documents were organized by state tabs: Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho. Pages filled with notes, addresses, partial statements, old case numbers. Corinne stared, horrified. Elias tapped a section. This is where it gets heavier. Trevor was working with someone else. A partner, a man named Tyler Reeves. Different last names, but similar methods. They approached the same types of women. Women like me, Corinne whispered. And like Marlena, Elias said. Men like them do not choose at random. Corinne reached out and touched one of the pages with tentative fingers. Who are these victims? Elias answered. Confirmed and potential. He paused before adding, and one pair currently active. I looked up sharply. Active? Elias turned to a tab marked Portland. A woman named Victoria Hayes and her daughter, Emma. Early signs match Trevor's pattern. Tyler has been in contact with them for months. Similar lies. Similar requests. Similar emotional steering. Corinne pressed a hand to her stomach. We cannot let what happened to me happen to her. Elias hesitated. I have been trying to reach Victoria. She ignored my calls until this morning. She left a voicemail asking for verification. She is scared. But she does not know who to trust. Then we go to her, I said, in person. Corinne blinked at me. I repeated. She looked between me and Elias, absorbing the weight of the decision. Her posture straightened, her breathing steadied. Mom, I want to help. I cannot undo what happened. But I can stop someone else from falling for the same manipulation. Elias nodded. If we act fast, we can prevent this from escalating. Corinne leaned in closer to the binder. What do we need to bring? What do we need to show her? Elias flipped to another section. Everything. Proof. Records. Patterns. enough to break the illusion before it traps her. Corinne exhaled slowly. Then let's do it. For the first time since the wedding fell apart, she looked like herself again, frightened, yes, but determined in a way I had not seen in years. I reached over and took her hand. We will do it together, she squeezed back. Together. Elias closed the binder with a firm click. Then we start immediately. Victoria Hayes opened the door with the exhausted look of someone who had not slept in days. You must be Marlena, she said quietly. And Corinne? Her eyes flicked to my daughter with a softness that held both curiosity and fear. Come in. Corinne gave her a gentle smile. We are here to help, nothing more. Inside. The table was already set 2 plates. 1 untouched glass of wine. A candle burned halfway down. Victoria wrung her hands. He is on his way, Tyler. He thinks it is just dinner to clear the air. You have the cameras, Elias. Standing in the corner, lifted a small device, audio and visual, all legal. If he reveals intent, we have what police need. Victoria swallowed. I hope I am doing the right thing. You are, I said. A knock sounded. The air tightened. Victoria steadied herself and opened the door. Tyler Reeves walked in with a polished smile that reminded me too much of Trevor's rehearsed. Warm, only on the surface. Victoria, he said, leaning to kiss her cheek. You look beautiful. She stepped back from the gesture. Thank you for coming. His eyes flicked to me and Corinne. And who are these? I stepped forward. Friends, Corinne added. We've heard a great deal about you. Tyler's smile thinned. Well, I hope it was flattering. It was informative. Corinne said, very informative. He looked between us. Something calculating flickering behind his eyes. This sounds like an ambush. Victoria's voice cracked. I just want honesty. Tyler softened instantly, reaching for her hands. You know you can trust me. Everything I have done was for us. You and Emma mean everything to me. Corinne stepped closer. Is that why you asked her for money? $10,000 here, $5,000 there. Promising investments that never happened. Tyler froze. I never. Elias interrupted. We have the records. Tyler's jaw tightened. You people do not understand. Victoria and I. You lied. Victoria's voice trembled, but she held her ground. You told me your company was expanding. You told me you needed me. You told Emma you wanted to help pay her tuition. She pulled a folder from the counter and threw it onto the table. You told us everything except the truth. Tyler's mask cracked. Anger surged beneath his forced charm. You think you can embarrass me? He stepped toward Victoria. I moved in front of her before he could get any closer. You are finished. He reached for her again, but the kitchen door swung open. 2 officers stepped inside. Tyler Reeves. Tyler tried to bolt for the back exit, but Elias blocked him. One officer grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. You are under arrest for fraud, identity misrepresentation, and financial coercion, the officer said. As they cuffed him, Tyler glared at Victoria. You ruined everything. She shook her head. No. I saved my daughter, and myself. Corinne touched her shoulder. You saved more than that. Tyler was dragged out of the house, shouting, but none of us followed. Victoria let out a broken breath and turned to me. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded. We look out for each other now, and as Corinne slipped her hand into mine, I knew this rescue was more than justice. It was healing, spreading outward. One woman at a time. The courtroom was colder than I expected, but Trevor looked smaller than I remembered. His suit hung off him like it no longer belonged to the man who used to walk into rooms as if he owned all of them. Tyler sat at the table beside him, hands cuffed, eyes darting nervously at every sound. Corinne sat next to me, fingers interlaced with mine. Her grip trembled only once. When Trevor glanced back at her, searching for sympathy, he no longer had the privilege to expect. The judge cleared his throat. Before sentencing, the court recognizes the victim impact statements. He looked directly at me. Mrs. Marlena Ridgway, you may speak. I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my backbone felt like steel. Trevor leaned forward, expecting fear, expecting apology. He got neither. I am 72 years old, I began, and I have lived through grief, hardship, and loneliness. But I have never endured a cruelty as deliberate as the one you crafted for my daughter and me. Trevor looked away. You told my daughter that I was a burden. I continued. You told her the best gift she could offer was my disappearance. But the truth is simpler. I paused, letting the room settle. You wanted access to her heart, to my savings, to our stability. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Trevor clenched his jaw. You asked me to disappear, I said, voice clear, unwavering. But in the end, you are the one erased. The courtroom went silent. You will spend years behind bars, I added, and when you come out, your network, your lies, your aliases, they will not protect you anymore. You tried to sever a mother from her daughter. Instead, you strengthened us. I turned and sat down. Corinne slid her hand around my arm, tears slipping quietly down her cheek. The judge nodded once. Thank you. Mrs. Ridgway. He lifted the papers before him for charges of fraud, coercion, identity manipulation, and financial abuse. Trevor Marston is sentenced to 10 years in state prison. Tyler Reeves is sentenced to 14. Neither man spoke. Neither looked back. When the gavel struck, Corinne exhaled shakily. Mom, she whispered. You saved me. No, I murmured, brushing her knuckles with my thumb. We saved each other. Months later, Corinne and I unlocked the doors to the office of our new foundation for the first time. A brass plaque waited by the entrance, the Ridgway Hayes Foundation for Family Protection. Victoria arrived minutes later with a stack of brochures. Emma right behind her. First workshop starts at 2, Victoria said. Full house. Corinne smiled. Really smiled for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Are you ready, Mom? I nodded, more ready than he ever expected. We spent that afternoon teaching families how emotional predators worked, how charm hid control, how kindness could be used as a hook, how trust could be weaponized. Every person who walked in carried a story. Every person who walked out carried a shield. When the workshop ended, Corinne closed the door and leaned against the frame. I never thought I could feel safe again. You are not just safe, I said. You are stronger. She stepped closer. You didn't disappear from the family. Mom? No, I answered softly. I disappeared from the life they tried to trap me in. Corinne hugged me tight. I'm proud of you. I smiled, feeling the grip of her arms around me, the same arms that had once pulled away. Now, they held on. And as we turned off the lights and closed the office for the night, I whispered silently to myself, when someone tries to erase you, you can always rewrite the ending. If this story gripped you, tap like, drop a comment, or subscribe for more.